2:14 a.m. The night air over a Russian airfield is cold and deceptively quiet. Runway lights glow faintly, fuel trucks are parked in neat rows, and hardened shelters sit behind layered air defenses designed to stop cruise missiles and fighter jets. Then, without warning, small blips flicker on the perimeter sensors, too slow for missiles, too low for comfort. Seconds later, a sharp flash cuts through the darkness, followed by a rolling fireball that silhouettes parked aircraft against the night sky. This is not a battlefield on the front line. This is deep inside Russia. And the attackers are not jets or ballistic missiles, but long-range drones launched by Ukraine, flying hundreds of kilometers to strike at the heart of an airbase once considered secure. Here's the shock. Each drone costs a fraction of the price of the air defense systems meant to stop it. Yet in the darkness, at low altitude, they slip through gaps created by physics, timing, and human reaction. One explosion becomes two. Secondary fires ignite. And then this happened. An outcome neither side publicly anticipated, with consequences that ripple far beyond the runway. If a handful of relatively simple drones can penetrate one of the world's densest air defense networks at night, what does that say about the future of air power and the true balance between cost, technology, and strategy in modern warfare? Since the early months of the war, airfields have been more than just infrastructure, they are force multipliers. From these runways launch the bombers that carry cruise missiles, the fighters that contest airspace, and the transports that keep logistics moving. Protecting them has therefore become a strategic obsession. Russia responded by wrapping key bases in layered defenses, long-range interceptors to catch aircraft and cruise missiles, medium-range systems to close gaps, and short-range guns and missiles to swat targets that slip through. Yet this architecture was built for a different threat profile. It assumes fast movers at altitude, predictable flight paths, and clear radar signatures. Long-range drones challenge those assumptions. They are slow, often fly nap of the earth, and approach from unexpected azimuths. At night, when visual cues vanish and reaction times stretch, the advantage tilts further toward the attacker. For Ukraine, striking airfields deep behind the front lines serves several purposes at once. First, it threatens high-value assets without needing air superiority. Second, it forces Russia to disperse aircraft, parking them farther apart, moving them between bases, or pushing them deeper inland, reducing sortie rates and increasing logistical strain. Third, it imposes a financial dilemma. Defending every base every night against inexpensive drones quickly becomes unsustainable. Geography compounds the problem. Many Russian airbases sit on flat terrain with long approach corridors that favor low-altitude flight. Radar coverage, while dense, is not continuous at very low elevations due to curvature of the earth, clutter, and masking by buildings and terrain. Electronic warfare helps, but jamming is not a silver bullet when drones can pre-program routes, switch guidance modes, or accept degraded navigation to reach a large stationary target like a runway or fuel farm. Politically, these strikes reverberate far beyond the blast radius. They signal reach and intent, reassuring domestic audiences while unsettling adversaries. They also test red lines: how deep is too deep and what constitutes a proportional response. Each successful penetration chips away at the perception of sanctuary and forces planners to rethink assumptions that once felt solid. The stage is set then for a confrontation defined not by brute force alone, but by asymmetry. Cheap platforms versus expensive defenses, patience versus reaction, and innovation versus legacy systems. The question now is how that clash unfolded on the night of the attack. Hours before the first explosion, the operation was already underway, quietly, methodically, and far from the airfield itself. Long-range drone strikes are not impulsive acts. They are the end product of weeks of reconnaissance testing and rehearsal. The most important work happens before launch, when engineers and operators reduce uncertainty to the bare minimum. The first layer is intelligence. Open source imagery, commercial satellite passes, and pattern of life analysis reveal more than static layouts. Analysts track when aircraft are most densely parked, when fuel trucks cluster, and when maintenance cycles peak. Night operations matter reduced visibility, slows human response, while predictable lighting patterns can betray active zones on a base. Even minor details, temporary scaffolding near a hangar or freshly disturbed soil, hint at where defenses may be weakest. Next comes route planning. Long-range drones do not rely on a single guidance method. GPS is useful but not trusted alone. Operators program inertial navigation backups, terrain reference checkpoints, and loiter logic that allows a drone to circle briefly if timing slips. Flying low is essential. At tens of meters above ground, radar horizons shrink, clutter increases, and reaction windows collapse. The drone's speed, often slower than a helicopter, becomes an advantage, blending it into background noise rather than announcing its arrival. Electronic warfare is anticipated, not feared. Designers assume partial jamming and plan for degradation rather than perfection. If satellite navigation drops, the drone continues on inertial guidance. If command links fade, autonomy takes over. The goal is not precision landing, it is reliable arrival within a lethal radius of large stationary targets, runways, fuel farms, and exposed aircraft. Human factors are everywhere. In makeshift workshops, teams work under time pressure, soldering connections, securing components against vibration, and testing control surfaces repeatedly. Batteries are warmed to optimal temperature. Warheads are checked and rechecked because a single failure turns a strategic message into a silent miss. Operators memorize contingency trees. If signal degrades, here switch mode. If altitude spikes, they're cut power and dive. By the time the drones are launched, the outcome is already leaning in one direction. Success no longer depends on constant control, but on preparation, on dozens of small decisions made hours earlier. What remains is execution. And once the drones cross the final kilometers, events accelerate beyond anyone's ability to slow them down. The first drones cross the final boundary just after 2:10. From this point on, there is no human intervention, only pre-programmed logic and the unforgiving math of distance, speed, and time. Flying at extremely low altitude, they follow terrain contours, slipping beneath radar lobes designed to catch faster, higher threats. To the air defense operators on duty, the night looks normal until it doesn't. A faint alert appears, not a full track, just noise. Something slow, inconsistent, almost dismissible. Seconds pass as operators debate whether it's clutter, wildlife, or a system artifact. That hesitation is the opening the drones were designed to exploit. One drone reaches the outer perimeter first. It does not aim for hardened shelters or command buildings. Instead, it dives toward a fuel storage area, large, stationary, and catastrophically vulnerable. The explosion is not massive at first, but it is precise. A vertical column of flame erupts briefly, illuminating the entire airfield. In that instant, the base gives itself away. Air defenses react violently. Short-range systems open fire tracers, carving frantic arcs through the darkness. Radar operators switch modes, searching for additional contacts. But this is where the sequence breaks in Ukraine's favor. The initial blast forces defenders to focus inward, while additional drones approach from different azimuths, timed to arrive during the confusion. A second impact hits near the runway. Concrete fractures. Debris scatters across the landing surface. Even without destroying aircraft directly, the effect is immediate. Sorties are frozen. Aircraft cannot take off or land safely. Then this happens. A secondary explosion, likely ignited by fuel vapors or stored munitions, detonates with far greater force than the first strike. The shockwave ripples across the apron, damaging exposed aircraft and shattering windows in nearby structures. What was supposed to be a contained incident escalates into a base-wide emergency. By the time the last drone crashes into its target, the airfield is no longer a defensive stronghold. It is a lit-up, chaotic node under siege by machines that cost less than the missiles fired to stop them. And the most important damage is not what burns, it is what stops. Flights are canceled, assets are relocated, confidence erodes. The attack lasts only minutes. The consequences will stretch far longer. Within seconds of the first detonation, the base's defensive posture snaps from routine vigilance to full emergency. Short-range air defenses fire aggressively, prioritizing volume over precision. Tracer rounds stitch the sky, illuminating smoke and debris, but illumination cuts both ways. Every muzzle flash, every radar pulse, every emergency light makes the airfield easier to find for any remaining inbound drones. This reaction highlights a structural problem. Layered air defense systems excel when threats arrive in expected envelopes fast, high, and few in number. Long-range drones invert that logic. They are slow enough to blend into background clutter, small enough to challenge discrimination, and numerous enough potentially to saturate response capacity. The defender must decide quickly, hold fire to avoid wasting interceptors, or engage and risk revealing positions and exhausting ammunition. The most consequential defensive failure is temporal. At night, with ambiguous tracks and the possibility of false alarms, hesitation is rational but costly. By the time a threat is confirmed, engagement options are limited, especially against targets already inside the perimeter. Strategically, the exchange is unfavorable for the defender. Each interceptor missile costs orders of magnitude more than the drone it targets. Even when interceptions succeed, the economics favor the attacker over time. The aftermath confirms the deeper impact. Runways may be repaired, fires extinguished, but the perception of invulnerability is gone. When a protected airfield deep inside Russia can be disrupted by systems fielded by Ukraine at a fraction of the cost, planners are forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. Defense is no longer about stopping every attack, it is about managing inevitability. The immediate damage can be measured in scorched concrete, shattered glass, and burned fuel. The broader impact is harder to quantify and far more consequential. When an airfield is disrupted, even temporarily, the ripple effects spread across the operational map. Aircraft sorties are delayed or canceled, maintenance schedules are broken, crews are forced into round-the-clock alert cycles. A base designed to project power outward becomes preoccupied with protecting itself. One of the first responses is dispersion. Aircraft are moved to secondary airfields parked farther apart or sheltered under improvised protection. This reduces the risk of catastrophic loss, but it also reduces efficiency. There is also a psychological dimension. Repeated nighttime alerts erode confidence. Crews sleep less. Decision-making degrades. Every unexplained sensor return becomes a potential crisis. Over time, this pressure changes behavior in subtle ways: slower reactions, conservative planning, and a growing reluctance to concentrate assets even when operationally desirable. At the strategic level, these strikes accelerate a shift already underway. Air power is no longer insulated by distance alone. The assumption that deep rear areas are safe has been broken by systems that are cheap, adaptable, and increasingly autonomous. This forces a reassessment not only of air defense doctrine, but of procurement priorities. Is it sustainable to defend every high-value site with expensive interceptors against a threat that can be reproduced at scale? Internationally, the implications extend beyond one conflict. Military planners around the world are watching closely, drawing lessons about base hardening redundancy and the balance between offense and defense. The message is clear: in an era of long-range drones, security is not binary. It is probabilistic and increasingly contested. What happened that night was not just an attack on a runway. It was a demonstration of how modern warfare is evolving one low-flying drone at a time. The night strike on a Russian airfield is a snapshot of a larger transformation underway. It shows how modern warfare is being reshaped not by a single breakthrough weapon, but by the accumulation of small, practical innovations. Long-range drones, autonomous navigation, and patient planning that exploit the limits of traditional defenses. In this contest, success is less about overwhelming force and more about persistence, timing, and cost asymmetry. What makes this shift so disruptive is not the destruction itself, but the uncertainty it creates. Defenders can repair runways and replace equipment, yet they cannot easily restore the sense of security that once protected rear areas. Every airfield must now be treated as a potential front line, every night as a window of vulnerability. The burden of constant vigilance grows heavier with each inexpensive drone launched. For attackers, the lesson is equally clear. Strategic effects do not require strategic weapons. By targeting the systems that enable power projection, fuel runways, maintenance hubs, small platforms can generate outsized consequences. The battlefield extends far beyond the immediate clash of forces, reaching into logistics, morale, and political calculation. For observers and planners worldwide, this episode raises uncomfortable questions. How do you defend against a threat that is cheap, adaptable, and scalable? At what point does defense become economically irrational? And how will doctrines evolve when the cost curve consistently favors the attacker? As conflicts continue to unfold, one reality is hard to ignore. The balance between offense and defense is shifting quietly but decisively under the cover of darkness. Understanding that shift is essential not to glorify destruction, but to grasp the strategic forces shaping the future of war. Bye for now.